This is Chris Wyse here from the Hollywood Vampires, and you're listening to the Nothing Shocking podcast.
Want to know what's going on in the world of music? Then tune in to the Nothing Shocking podcast, a non-genre based, all ages friendly rock and roll program. Join us weekly for interviews with all your favorite rock stars from the mainstream to the underground. You can find us at nothingshocking.libsyn.com or anywhere you download podcasts.
We're putting the band back together.
The numbers all go to 11.
I'm talking about bands that rock. Led Zeppelin. What about Sabbath? AC/DC. Motorhead.
Does that mean it's louder? Is it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it?
We're not worthy! We're not worthy!
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
I get up off the ground and raise my head. Days like this, think I should be dead. One for Satan, two for me. Let's cheat the devil, it's fun, don't you agree?
Welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'm your co-host, Jeff Unteed, and with me in Dog Bowl Studios is
Coach Nez.
You can find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Libsyn or any podcatchers. Like our Facebook page or follow us on Twitter at No Shock Pod.
You can also find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Rock Rage Radio every Sunday morning at 7 a.m. Central Time. Our sponsor is Ragged Records, located in downtown Rock Island, Illinois, and downtown Davenport, Iowa. We'd like to thank the Hong Kong Sleepover for allowing us to use their music for our intro and bumper ending. Tonight's guest is
Chris Wyse of the Hollywood Vampires,
Ace Frehley,
The Cult,
Mick Jagger,
and the Jerry Cantrell Band,
and Crossbone Skully.
Yeah, he's got a new project, Crossbone Skully, and another project, acoustic band called The Mad Day Out.
Yeah, hey, if you have not checked out Chris Wyse's new stuff, Crossbone Skully or The Mad Day Out, check it out. Let's get to that interview.
All right, good night.
Good night. Chris, welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'd like to introduce you my co-host, Jeff Unteed.
Chris, thanks for joining us tonight.
Hello, Jeff, Eric. Nice to be on your podcast. Thank you very much for having me.
We're so excited,
Yeah.
and I got to tell you, I've been trying to get you on this podcast for years, and so somehow the stars were aligned, and it all worked, so I was really excited when we finally scored you tonight. So I'm a little giddy,
great.
little giddy right now.
Yeah, finally, yeah.
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
So you have some news. You have a new acoustic band on the horizon here. Can you give our listeners an insight on this new endeavor?
Well, we're going to be playing around LA in the new year. We just were recording the last couple days in a great studio out here in San Fernando Valley. It's Eric Bradley, which has been in and out of my band Owl. And I met him when I was years ago in the Jerry Cantrell band, like 2003. So we've sung together and played together, and we harmonized together and sort of trade vocals, lead vocals back and forth, backing each other up. So that's really cool. We got a nice gel. And Ryan Brown's on drums, who was also in and out of my band Owl over the years. And we're all really good friends for a long time. And Ryan Brown plays drums in Dweezil Zappa.
Oh, yeah.
So I got some really, really monstrous musicians, but it's a trio and it's acoustic. I'm playing my electric Martin bass guitar and adding upright bass and playing with the bow sometimes. Eric's on acoustic and Ryan's experimenting with like percussion and stuff like that. So we're mixing in some of our originals with like remaking covers in an acoustic sort of format, but it's got energy. It's not like campfire slow ballady. It's got a lot of energy and dynamics, and it's going to be exciting because I guess we started kicking it around over COVID and all that because we were looking to maybe play smaller venues, more intimate venues with that acoustic vibe. And if there's something special about playing acoustic, there's a little more of a, even though we're inevitably plugged in through a PA, it's a pared down. Remember when MTV Unplugged was doing that kind of thing? So it's going to be cool. It's a new project for us guys to kind of, we'll start out playing around LA here and see where it takes us. Well, and you were just recording the last 2 days. We recorded 4 new tracks, so it's going to be exciting to share it with everyone.
Yeah.
So does this new project have a title? Do you have a name yet?
Yeah. Eric came up with the name The Mad Day Out, which is a Beatles song. And we thought it just sounded really cool. So we're going with The Mad Day Out. And we were putting it down for the first time in all our sessions yesterday. It was really exciting.
Oh, so
really cool.
Nice.
Jeff, you got the next one?
Well, I mean, just off that one, I mean, Eric and I are old school. We love the days of MTV and Unplugged and all that stuff. I'm surprised that in today's era that somebody hasn't picked up on those Unplugged shows and got some artists to do that again.
Yeah, me too. But what it gives you is like it really shows off the songs. Yeah. Whether it's a cover or an original or whatever you happen to be playing, it's like it really shows off the vocals, the songs, the arrangement. When you got big bombastic guitars and heavy drums and stuff, you're counting on sonics more and the power of a loud Marshall amp or SVT bass amp and big heavy drums. So it's just another approach. I love playing heavy and loud and electric and all that, but this is just a different kind of outlet. And also, like, I'm doing a lot of bow work in it, so I'm playing upright bass with a bow and soloing, and it's really cool. I'm still stretching out and still growing after all these years of playing bass, and singing. It's really, really cool.
Absolutely. So you said you recorded some new tracks. Is there a game plan here of when to release some new music for the masses?
Well, probably in the beginning of the new year, for sure. We're going to be maybe putting out a few songs and sharing it with everyone, and then starting to play and see where it takes us. We're all, like I said, really, really, we go way back, old friends and everything. We're really doing it out of enjoyment right now, but we'd like to get it rolling for sure, out in the clubs and all that.
Oh, you got us excited.
Yeah. Well, you kind of mentioned Owl. That's a band that you lead. You're the vocals, songwriter, producer. Can you tell? I think you guys have 3 albums. What's the status of that band? Are you still together doing?
Well,
anything?
Owl. Bands aren't the easiest thing in the world sometimes. Yeah. And that band, when we were hitting it hard for a long time, for many years, and I think we're just on a bit of a hiatus. That's my buddy Dan Dinsmore from New York. We went to high school together. He's a monster drummer, and he also has a band called the Clay People. I don't know, that's a heavier band, and I've been a guest on some of their stuff over the years, and they have a certain amount of success and stuff. It's a little more hardcore than Owl, but Owl's got those 3 records, and we've been talking about re-releasing them, remixing and things like that. And in the meantime, I started working on my solo album, which is kind of using the Owl mysticism kind of imagery and stuff like that. And what I'm doing with my solo record is kind of going off on an unbeaten path more, where I'm layering like 12, say, upright basses with a bow, and almost coming up with like soundtrack sounding pieces and things that aren't so straightforward at all. You could almost picture it as like, something in a horror movie.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would be an example, and you can kind of see some of the, if you saw some of the artwork on the website, this guy, Russell Marks, is an amazing artist. They're all paintings, actually. And I found him on a Netflix series called Myths and Monsters, and I came back from writing a song from the studio about Jack the Ripper. And it's like a 7-minute kind of song. It's supposed to be kind of like theater of the mind, takes you on a journey where I'm layering basses, I'm singing, I'm telling the story of Jack the Ripper in the London streets back in the day. And I happened to see this guy's artwork, and it was Spring-Heeled Jack, which is a older, I think 1700s sort of mythical murderous monster on the streets of London. Same kind of thing. So that's where Jack the Ripper came from. There was something before Jack the Ripper, but his artwork was in this series on Netflix that was on TV, and I went, oh my goodness, like, wow, I would really like to find an artist like that. And one of my manager buddies was like, why don't we call him? And so I started collaborating with him, like on Skype, and discussing some of my versions of, like, so Jack the Ripper was sort of this owl creature, vampiric owl creature. And he started doing these paintings and sending me this stuff back where the owl creature was an upright bassist, and I was having fun in a whole different light.
Yeah.
So Owl would be more like a more of a rock band with songs, you know, like Queens of the Stone Age or Nirvana or something like that. And my solo thing is taking on sort of like, you know how Van Halen would have these like outros and intros or just a random musical piece. Yeah. I'm sort of focusing in on the fun of that stuff for my solo album, even though there's some songs there. But also the fun is if you go to my website, chriswyse.com, you'll see the pieces of art that are attached to the songs, painted for each song, which really takes you a little more deep into what I'm doing. And, you know, the Hollywood Vampires, in a sort of strange way, inspired my solo album.
Yeah.
Because there's a bow piece on the album Rise. Right. And it's just like a minute and a half or two, I think. And that was like Tommy, the producer and guitar player in the Hollywood Vampires, asked me, he said, you know, can you come up with one of those owly kind of freaky bow pieces and for the record? And Johnny Depp titled it A Pitiful Beauty, which was one of his titles in his book with all the concepts for Rise. And when I got it done and I sent it to them, I sort of just built it up, all these layers of bowed bass, very gothic, classical, with a modern tinge, spooky sounding stuff. I went and thought to myself, oh my goodness, I could probably do a whole bunch of songs like this or pieces of music and not be so concerned about the structure of like an ABC singer-songwriter, you know, verse, pre-chorus, chorus kind of concept. And that really kind of kicked it off, which was cool. It was cool they asked me for that. And then it was cool that I realized, like, this is something I could probably do a lot of. And I'm hoping it might transition into my music getting in movies and things like that.
Oh, yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah.
Very cool. You know, let's talk a little bit more about the transition from being a band member to doing your own solo endeavor. How challenging has that been for you to make that switch over from band member to, hey, now I'm the guy?
Well, yeah, once in a while, you know, you don't agree when you're in a band on what the song direction is going. And like Dan's very talented and I value his opinion, but we wouldn't always agree. And Eric has also been involved in Al, another guy named Jason who was involved for a while too. And once in a while, you know, you just don't agree on the song. And I'd say, that's like you negotiate and you might compromise or you might not. So there's some grappling there, but that's what makes a band, you know, and you have to have respect for each other and listen to each other's opinions. And sometimes I'm wrong. And I've learned that over the years, like, you know, that the way you did the chorus last time was way better. I'm like, no, I like the way I'm doing the chorus now. And it's like, no, you should go back. And then you kind of grapple. And then you realize you're going to have to kind of find a happy medium. And with my solo stuff, I can just go off on all these tangents and really pursue the vision. I'm very visual type. That's why I have the artwork attached to everything. And I'm sort of chasing after a story I'm trying to get out of my head and make the sounds on the bass and singing and all that sound like the story. So, and in some ways, actually, I think it was kind of easier. Because it was just me going for it. And I have a very clear vision for the most part. I usually don't work on something unless I do. So it was a lot of fun. And I had found this amazing engineer to work with. And he was very talented and fast. So I was just basically throwing things out very spontaneously, chasing my vision. And it was fun. It was like a whole new outlet. It was a whole different kind of thing where I could go, look, I'm going to write this thing called Haunted Bass, and it's going to be like 12 layers of bass, and I'll be playing with it's not like something you could do live because of all the layers of just me doing it. But it was also a new expression that I found rather than bass, drums, guitar. And you might do some layers or an outro here and there. But this became like this new exciting, like, I've used this phrase, theater of the mind. Mm-hmm. Like if you pop it on while you're getting ready and you're cooking dinner or whatever, it's kind of like a mini movie. You know, that's what I'm trying to kind of provide. Almost more than just the straight ahead songwriting, singer-songwriter approach I've used over the years.
Oh, very cool. Good. Yeah. Well, talk a little bit more about the upright bass. Is that something that's a fairly new transition for you, or did you start with upright bass before you became a rock and roll bassist, or how's it work for you?
It was bass guitar first, and then like I grew up in New York, and then we were living upstate, and the colleges around there were classical only. There wasn't like Berkeley or MIT and stuff like that had bass guitar. So it was sort of sprung upon me. And at the time I wasn't going to move. I had a band and a girlfriend and all this kind of stuff that kept me a little more tied at the time. So I stayed in like the upstate area, and I went to college around there, and my parents got me the upright. And it was a bit painful at first because, you know, a fretted bass guitar, it's called a Fender Precision for a reason, because it was more precise, and it's a lot of work to kind of work on your bow technique and stuff. But I was only playing for like 3 years. It came really fast for me on the bass guitar, and I just transitioned everything onto the upright and started taking like classical lessons from this gentleman named Michael Wicks that was in the Albany Symphony. And I took to it really quick. I found it more difficult. I was frustrated. I wanted to pull my hair out sometimes. But this is just a short few years after playing bass guitar. So I've been playing upright bass for many years. I'm playing, you know, I started in my young teens, and then about 17, I started playing upright very seriously. And, you know, the classical instrument, the viol, you know, an upright bass, obviously fretless. The positions are a little more tricky than playing bass guitar, but I committed to it. And when I came to Los Angeles, I brought it with me and the whole thing, and I had a special pickup on it. But it was the tricky thing about playing upright bass in a rock band is the volume and the feedback. And this has been my lifetime. So a lot of people don't understand this stuff, but an upright and a loud Marshall heavy metal drum setting is like almost impossible. I had like the M&M size like blisters on my fingers trying to play hard enough, and then it would feed back. And I joined this band Lusk it was Paul D'Amour from Tool's band when I came out to LA, because they heard me playing. I was their next door neighbor, Chris Pittman's next door neighbor, who started this band with Paul D'Amour from Tool. This is when Paul left Tool. And they got Justin after that. Paul left Tool and had this band Lusk, and he played guitar, and he asked me if I'd play upright bass, and I said, yeah. So I started playing the upright bass, but we had some issues with it, with the heat and the tuning and it's a more delicate thing to deal with. And you have this gigantic coffin that shows up at a festival, and they leave it out in the sun. And so there was issues with it, and sometimes feedback and stuff. And if you ever heard of upright bass feedback, it's like a B-52 bomber going overhead. It just blows everything out of the water. So Paul found and bought my first electric upright bass, which was a game changer. And then I started playing the electric upright bass, and it was just like plugging in a guitar or a bass guitar. And suddenly I was as loud. I could be too loud if I wanted. And again, stuck with my bow technique. I mean, I'll be working on playing upright bass with a bow and perfecting my technique as long as I live. It's like one of those things you keep practicing. You know, classical musicians, they play like 4 hours a day, and it's a lot. They play scales a lot just to keep their pitch strong and sense of technique. I explain it to people like this. It's kind of like yoga. Like, you can't push too hard, but you have to push enough. And if you push too hard, the bass goes out of tune. You bow too hard, you get too much scrapey noises. You bow too hard, you go sharp. You pick too hard, your tone suffers. So it's this kind of more matured thing I've stuck with. And now I have Ned Steinberger makes these upright basses too. I have a couple of them, and I've made it a little easier on myself over the years with these, like, easier to travel with basses.
Nice, very
and and the one I use in the Hollywood Vampires that we just did a massive tour this summer. One of the best tours of my life, to be honest with you. It's like absolutely amazing tour. That the one that Paul got me back in '97 when I joined Lusk is really got a special aesthetic to it. It's got the scroll and it looks like an upright bass, a little slimmer, but it's amazing to play in front of, like, 80,000 people playing an upright bass and hearing that sub on the stage, and it hits people right in their private parts, man. Like you feel it.
Nice.
I don't know if you heard the song Heroes that Johnny Depp sings.
Yeah.
We did a cover of Heroes. I'm playing that bass in the video, and I've been playing that bass live. It's got a special subby, sounds like the real thing, but I don't have to worry about it feeding back, that's the game changer. That's one of the unique things I have in my arsenal, shall we say.
Well, let's talk more about the Hollywood Vampires. You guys, I think they have a new concert documentary coming out. Can you talk a little bit?
Yeah, I guess they're calling it a documentary. We had played this gorgeous theater in Boston, the Wang Box Center. It's all ornamented with like Eastern Chinese, very gorgeous red velvet. It's just over the top. You guys have to see this place when it finally comes out. We're friends with Ernie Bach, who owns the place, and it was just an amazing experience. We had a big film crew come in and shoot our show, which was great because it was at the end of our tour. And so obviously we had really done the hard work to get the show sounding and looking the way it did. So it's great to document something that we all worked so hard on. There's already, like, I see, on the Hollywood Vampires social media, they've already mentioned it coming soon, but the exact date I don't have. I imagine the early quarter of next year, I would imagine. I'm guessing at this point. I don't have an exact date yet, but I can tell you it really did capture the show. It's a really special band. It's a total honor to be invited into a super group like that. And, but I had the kind of right background for it, being in the cult and having done a lot of hard rock stuff. Ace Frehley, basically, they just invited me in the band. I knew they were looking for somebody. Tommy Henriksen is the kind of MD producer, and I was with the Ace Frehley band for about 4 years, and we were opening up for Alice Cooper in Australia. So I'd be seeing, Ryan, Roxy, and Nita Strauss, and Alice, and Glenn Sobel, and everybody. And Tommy was kind of like a new friend, and we'd have coffee. And he told me one day over coffee in the hotel, he's like, Chris, man, the Hollywood Vampires are looking for a new bass player. And I said, oh, that's cool. We kind of went over my head because Robert DeLeo was in the band. And he went back to Stone Temple Pilots, and they got a new singer. Yep. Awesome bass player. And, of course, Duff McKagan was in the band before that, and he went back to Guns N' Roses. So he was unavailable. That's why they had Robert, and now Robert was going back to his original band. So it kind of went over my head, and Tommy's looking at me like, Wise, I'm telling you, we're looking for a new guy. And I'm like, oh, you mean me? Yeah. And I was like, oh, my goodness. And it kind of went on for almost the better part of a year after it came up. And I kind of just said, I'm going to put it out of my mind because you just never know, right? You don't want to get attached to an outcome. And they have access to the whole world. Like, everyone wanted to play bass with them. And it was like, I saw I started researching them more, and I saw they had McCartney on the record, and they had Flea was over there, and they had Nikki Sixx guesting on the first record. So I thought, I better forget about this one. And then out of the blue, I get a call, and they said, Tommy calls me, and he said, hey, we've all discussed it. Everyone voted for you. You got the gig. The manager's going to call you in about an hour and tie everything up. And I was like, what? So that was just how it happened. It was as simple as that. But I have a good amount of history and stuff, so they kind of knew they knew what I was capable of and the type of guy I was and my genre that I've sort of favored, and all that.
Yeah.
So it just sort of popped up. And funny enough, I was afraid to spring the upright bass on them in the first rehearsals because sometimes people react to it like, no, that's not rock and roll, or it's not. They have an idea of what I should do. And I brought the upright bass and I kind of had it packed up in the background. And I said, hey, Alice, Johnny, Joe, because the other guys I've known and they knew about it. And I said, I got it with me. And I said, let me show you this. And I pulled it out and I did some finger stuff and some bow stuff and some effects. And I showed them sort of all the thing, like a little demo, shall we say, of what I could do with it. And they all, Johnny, Joe, and Alice all said, oh my God, you're definitely going to have to use that. So they're so cool because they have such a good, open-minded, artistic view of things, I know it scared other people. They weren't familiar with it, or it's not the norm. But I like that the vampires have a very strong artistic sense,
Absolutely.
And and I ended up just suggesting maybe I'll try it on this one, and it became part of the set and the show on a couple, 2-3 songs, depending on which set we did, and it's wonderful, to be able to express unique, off the beaten path stuff like that, especially in a hard rock heavy metal hard rock band.
Absolutely. This past 2023, the Vampires released Live in Rio. Can you give us and our listeners an insight to the touring plans for the Vampires this 2024?
Well, I know the guys are talking about what's next, and everyone. The problem is with the level of guys we got. It's the scheduling, so I'm sort of in a holding pattern, waiting to hear what's up next. But I know we're all excited about the documentary concert that we shot in Boston, and I think that's going to kick off a lot of attention and excitement again for the band. So I've been hearing certain things, but nothing's quite cemented. But I imagine we'll know in the beginning of the year a little more, and. The Rock in Rio thing, that was with Duff McKagan. That was like in 2016. I joined the band in 2018.
Mm-hmm. Very
so good. That was something they had in their back pocket previously. Yeah.
I wanted to bring this back.
Go ahead. That was a whole different band. That was Matt Sorum and a different keyboard player and different bass player.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I wanted to bring this back to Owl. My favorite album from the band is Things You Can't See, and my favorite track is Lake Ego. What a great song. Dark, heavy.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit more about the creation of that track? The fantastic song. Absolutely fantastic.
Well, it's funny. I had the song going and I didn't know what to call it, and first of all, the song title came from my mother telling me that she was going to Lake George and it's spell corrected into Lake Ego because my folks are in New York and they were going to Lake George, upstate New York, and they said, "Oh, we're going to Lake George, talk soon," and it came out Lake Ego, and I'm like, "What's Lake Ego?" And she was like, "Ha ha, I guess it was a spell correct or whatever, spell check," and it just did that. And I said, oh, my gosh, you just gave me the title for my song, Lake Ego, because the song was about a relationship I had with a girl that I was really tight with and very much in love with and all this stuff. And one of my sort of rock star buddies ended up hooking up with her right after we broke up. And I was really upset about it. And I wrote that song about how it wasn't really about deep feelings or anything. It was just a lot of ego. Like the girl had to get another guy in a band. And I wrote it about, it's kind of revealing to tell you that, I will not say who it was, but you can imagine how that felt. Yeah. So that's where all that angst and darkness came from in those lyrics and those vocals and calling out someone's ego, because they could have easily picked, when you could easily pick someone else besides someone so close to you.
Right.
So Lake Ego is drowning in a lake of one's ego.
Yeah. Very good.
Kind of trying to one up or trying to put the knife in. Okay, you know, like we're done, but now I'm seeing your rock star buddy. Yeah. I was like, wow. So that I let everything out in songs.
Yeah,
you know?
no, that's
fantastic.
It sucks that happens to you, but it's like, yeah, it makes some of the best music.
It really does.
Well, in the moment, it seemed really awful. I look back now and I just think it's kind of funny, and I'm glad I got a song out of it. And my mother is the titled it because of the spell correct.
That's awesome.
And that's an example. If you hear that, that's an example of layering in some of the upright with the bow and treating like sort of that unorthodox type of instrument in a hard rock band in a different way and incorporating it. There's like a little bridge in the middle with the bow, and the whole song's on upright, but I'm kind of utilizing what I've been talking about, how I kind of go off the beaten path and try something different with the sonics and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's just a great track. Absolutely fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah, a lot of people told me they liked that one. That's why Dan and I from Owl, we've been talking about a couple of things, like re-releasing them, remixes and stuff like that, because it had a peak, and then the band's been on a hiatus, and we were like, I wonder if we took the best of the three records is another idea we were talking about, because it'd be like almost a whole new, I don't know about generation, but a whole new like decade again, where it would almost be brand new. And to me, the stuff sounds as fresh as it did when we started releasing music 2009, you know?
Absolutely.
And we also did that song Pusher. I don't know if you got to see that video.
Yeah, that's a good
or
one.
whatever.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, and that's sort of, again, like play on words. It's not necessarily a drug pusher. It's being addicted to a woman, and you know she's bad for you, and you just keep going for it. And we had the guy who draws Batman, one of the comic book guys, do all that animation for us in the video.
Oh, very good.
And that was 2009. So I think it would be kind of fun to grab some of our best of and put it back out there, because I think a whole new group of music fans would hear it for the first time again, since we've been sort of inactive. So it's definitely, it's not out of the picture. It's just we've taken a break. We hit it really hard. And I was in The Cult, I was in Ace, I was in Owl, I was doing projects in town. I was in like 7 bands at once. I was burning it a little too hard. Yeah. So sometimes you just need a break. As much as I love the guys and the music and everything, I put my heart and soul into it, but I needed to step back to get a new perspective.
Oh, very good.
Kind of maybe get a fresher one when I appreciate it more when I get back to it. You know?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm going to go back to one you said a little bit ago, that one I didn't have on my original list, the Jerry Cantrell Band. Can you talk a little bit more about how you got involved with him? Eric and I are both big Alice in Chains fans from back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was from, I met him from playing in a band called Camp Freddy, which is an all-star band that Dave Navarro had.
Yeah.
It was called Camp Freddy. It's called something else now. But I met a lot of people doing that gig. And that sort of came up because I was in The Cult, and Billy Duffy would be a guest sometimes, and they didn't know of a bass player that could just jump in and learn 20 songs and sing, and Billy and I were sort of talking again. I did that Beyond Good and Evil record, but didn't tour that album. And I bumped into Billy around town, and he said, "Oh, you should do this, this guy's going to call you Billy Morrison. It's this thing called Camp Freddy. It's an all-star band, and we need somebody." And I said, great. And then one of the shows I did was with Jerry, and we just hit it off. And I had a deal for Owl years ago. This is like back before we even released music. I was the guy that almost happened like 20 times with my band Owl. There's people and labels and a lot of excitement about it, but it just didn't take off. So I had lost this sort of deal, and the band broke up again. And I met Jerry, and I started going over to his house and crashing on his couch. And then I just moved in, and we started working together. We wrote a bunch of songs that were supposed to be for a new band that no one's ever heard. But then he got Alice in Chains back together, so that obviously took precedence. But that's where I met Eric, who's in The Mad Day Out.
Nice.
And Eric and I harmonized really well together. There is a little bit of this Alice in Chainsy maybe influence or whatever, because of that and what I'm doing now, funny enough.
Yeah.
But my voice suited a lot of stuff Jerry was doing, and so did Eric's. And the three of us, we had 3-part harmonies, and Mike Borden was in the band. We did a tour with Kid Rock. See, the one thing about Alice was there wasn't 3-part harmonies, even though they were on the record. So when we played live, we were doing the 3-part harmonies, which was cool. So Eric and I, we were really close friends. That was back in 2003, 20 years ago. So Eric and I have a tremendous history. And isn't it cool that you still have these friends, even though certain bands come and go, and you're still friends? And then that led to Eric working with my band Owl. He's actually on my first record, and he's on some of the more recent year stuff too. So that's part of what's going on with my new band, funny enough, the Mad Day Out, because it's like, oh wow, we can sort of just fit in together, Eric and I, and that's related back to the Jerry band.
Yeah.
And then a dream came true when I was with Jerry. I loved Alice in Chains, and Jerry and I were tight, living together and working on a lot of stuff. And we had a band called the Cardboard Vampires with Billy Duffy, John Karabi. It was like a heavy metal Camp Freddy. And then because of Mike Borden, when we were in rehearsals, I didn't know Mike, and I was just getting to know him in rehearsals. Awesome guy from Faith No More, and amazing drummer. He's got his own sound and style. And he said, when the big guy calls again, you're the guy. You should have been the guy all along. And I'm like, what? What do you mean? And like, are you talking about Ozzy? And he was like, yeah. And sure enough, when Ozzy decided to do another record, it was Jerry, Cantrell, Mike Borden, and I were the core band. And it was on Prince of Darkness and Undercover. So there's a lot of history with my guys, over the years. And funny enough, the Ozzy thing, and all these people are tied together. That's why when we were chatting, I was writing you a bit yesterday. I'm like, it's almost hard not to bring up all the things because they're all so intertwined, Like if I didn't play with Ace, I might not be in the Vampires. And if I didn't play with Jerry, I might not have done that Ozzy, and so on and so on. The way it just all worked together. But when I auditioned for Metallica, I was the last guy to audition, and I was one of Bob Rock's top call bassists that he'd call for records. And I did that record with Tal Bachman with that hit song She's So High. That's how I met Bob. Yeah. And so that was a great record. Yes, I was just hanging with Tal a couple of weeks ago, actually. He was in town from Vancouver. We're still friends. And so what happened was Kirk I was the last guy to audition. Bob was like, they didn't think anyone else could play except for Robert with the fingers and play with that kind of ferocity. And Bob said, I know a guy, you got to check him out. So I was there for 6 hours. Mm-hmm. Everyone else was in and out 20 minutes. There was a few guys ahead of me. I was the very last guy to audition, and I was very comfortable. I mean, I can play all that stuff. I can play that stuff on an upright bass with a bow. I mean, I really I can. If they went that direction, I would have probably taken that band in a whole different type of maybe more Cliff classical upright. Who knows? I love Robert, though. I have much respect for him. But Kirk Hammett called me and said, hey, Robert's going to be the guy. It took him 2 weeks, too, because I threw them off because they didn't think anyone else could actually precisely play with power like that. And I could, I mean, I know what I can do. And it's I knew if they needed me, I would have been very comfortable playing that kind of super heavy stuff with the power and the chops. But he called me and said, we're going to go with Robert. We liked you a lot. Would you like us to call Ozzy? Because now Robert's leaving Ozzy. Wow. But the funny thing was, he calls me back an hour later. Jason Newsted got the Ozzy gig at the time with a phone call. They never jammed or anything. He was already Jason Newsted, and he got it. And so it came back around when I met Mike Borden. So it's kind of crazy what you put out in the universe, When I was a young boy, first playing bass in New York, I told my mom and dad that I'm going to move to Hollywood and play with Ozzy someday. And of course, when you're like 14 with your bass, saying that to your mom and dad, they're like, "That's nice, son." And I got to call my mother and father and say, "You won't believe who I'm working with." I was in the studio recording. And at that point, I did a lot of stuff. I had done stuff with Mick Jagger and the Cult and a lot of Tal, and they were like, "Gosh, I have no idea." And then my pops goes, they're on speakerphone. He was like, "Wait a minute, it's not who I think." And I'm like, "Yep, the one I predicted." So that was kind of a wild thing, you know. Very, very interesting how things work out, because I'm not a hustler per se, like, you know, we all know guys that do that kind of hustle.
Oh, yeah.
You always are networking and, you know, almost like a businessman about it. I'm just more or less an artist that genuinely fit into places, you know.
Don't you believe, though, that the best advertisement of oneself is word of mouth?
Yeah.
Yeah, and just playing, you know, like I can't tell you, like someone was telling me the other day, "Hey, remember you did that acoustic show? There was this club over in Los Feliz called Tangier." I had no memory of it. I was like, "What?" And I was like, now I vaguely remember, but I pounded the pavement in Hollywood here so hard with my own band. And I also did tons of sessions and like jumping in, like someone was trying to showcase, so they'd like hire me to learn their set and do the rehearsals. Like I've lost count. Like if I were to sit down, it would be a deep, deep dive to remember it all, because I was really working hard. So work creates more work, and that's how people saw me, because I was out there doing it, you know.
Well, let's talk about something new here. Let's talk about Crossbone Skully.
Oh yeah,
new endeavor. Have some new music out, new music video. Tell us a little bit more.
Yeah. It's Tommy Henriksen's band, essentially, but it's a collaboration of people, and Mutt Lange produced it, which is an amazing thing. I just did 3 videos with Skully, Crossbone Skully, and Unbreakable's out now. Mm-hmm. And there's this one called "I'm the Wolf," which I'm using that upright bass I was talking about in it. That just came out. And there's another one coming up. I actually called Tommy earlier, but I wasn't able to reach him. I wanted to find out when so I could tell you guys. But that's coming up. So keep your eye on their Instagram, Crossbone Skully. It's really great. I mean, Tommy's one of my favorite people and musicians. He's a special talent. And he's his voice is incredible on this stuff. And if you think Mutt Lange, what do you think? You think AC/DC, of course.
Of course.
And you think Def Leppard. Yeah. And if you listen to this Crossbone Skully stuff, you're going to go, "Oh my God." It's like a modern version sometimes of those influences, but it's uniquely Tommy still. And his voice is just incredible. I mean, he's been singing backgrounds with Alice. He's singing a lot live. His voice is incredible. And I really think that pushes it over the top. But I'm involved, and I'm happy to be involved. And there's some talk of touring coming up. So 2024 could be really busy. I don't have exact dates and things yet to tell you guys. Maybe we can follow up, and when I do, I'll write you and stuff. It's kind of in the making, all this right now. Tommy would have me come over, Johnny Depp's house over here in Hollywood. He did a lot of the bass tracking over there. And I would just go over to the studio, bring my P bass or my upright, and a lot of times Tommy didn't want me to know the song. He was like, "Just come over and we'll start working." So I had that real fresh take, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like I didn't sit home and go over it and stuff like that. And he's really good like that. What he does is oftentimes he'll say, "You got it, that's it." And I'll say, no. Like I'm the type that wants to do it 10 more times and perfect it. And he's like, nope, we're not doing that. And I'm like, "Oh, come on, man." It's funny. And a lot of times I'd listen back now and I'm like, he's right. It's got the rawness to it. And he was like that when I was tracking bass and working with the Hollywood Vampires record. It was like, he wanted the strong, almost like old school live spontaneity in the track, where it wasn't over processed, it wasn't overworked on. And I think that's why a lot of the stuff with Crossbone Skully sounds real fresh, and the Hollywood Vampires, because he produced that, you know. And Tommy's so talented. Awesome to have Mutt Lange. I mean, he's a legend. I mean, amazing talent. But Tommy's so talented, he doesn't even need a producer. So it's interesting that all this came together the way it did.
So cool.
Yeah.
Pass the next question over to Jeff here.
Well, no, I don't really have a question. The only thing I was going to say is a previous guest asked us, like, what was one of the best shows we've ever been to, and I wish I would have told this story instead. The Alice Cooper came to town a while back and had the night before, it was the Alice Cooper band that came, and it was Tommy and Ryan Roxy and Nita and Glenn Sobel, and they got up and performed, and each one of them sang songs and did their own, did each one of their own solo stuff, and it was just the coolest show ever.
Yeah, well, I've jumped in on the Alice thing about 4 times when Chuck couldn't do it for various reasons. Mm-hmm. And I've done the Alice Cooper. That's what's amazing about my new camp of musicians, well, semi-new camp. It's been several years now, but recent years, is that the Vampires led to me doing the Joe Perry project a couple times and touring with Joe's stuff. And then the Vampires led to, I think Chuck had some conflict. There was some mix-up with the schedule, and he called me. And it's nice those guys trust me so much and said, Chris, can you jump in and do Alice Cooper? You know, and I was like, yeah, I'd love to. And a couple times it was last minute, and it was very stressful because if you're not in the right spot, Alice is running around with a sword. You got to be careful. Right. He threw a hatchet down. I just jumped in and did a few shows fairly recently in September. It was the Rob Zombie Ministry Filter tour they were doing. Freaks on Parade, that's what it was. And it was great. I knew Paul D'Amour, the guy I told you about, that started Lusk and bought my upright bass. He's playing bass in Ministry. And so when I went backstage, Monty Pittman's one of my friends, and I know Johnny Radke from Filter. So it was awesome, but it was a little stressful too because I'm like, oh my God, Rob Zombie standing on the side of the stage, and I just learned this song on the plane coming in. It was like, wow, And another time, Ryan Roxy, this is in 2019, I flew to England and did a few shows to fill in for Chuck again. And the big baby that comes out, breaks through the wall there for $1 Billion Babies. I was standing right in front of the wall, and the guy inside the baby costume can't see him there. And Ryan Roxy grabbed me by my shirt and pulled me out of the way, or I would have got run over. And then Nita's telling me I have to learn where to be on stage. And Nita's telling me, like, while we're playing the show, she kind of points at the tower and she goes, Chris, and she sort of makes this rocky kind of back and forth motion. I'm like, what? And I get up to the tower, and there's this musical, the musical section medley in the middle of the show. Yes. I have to go climb the stairs, let alone remember all the music, and trying to avoid getting run over or stabbed. I'm running up the stairs to be in the right place for the sake of the lights and the show. And I get up to that castle, that haunted castle thing, Nightmare Castle, and the tower is rocking. And I'm looking through all the scaffolding going, I'm going to die. I'm going to die up here. Everyone's going to talk about how, like, Chris jumped in for the Alice Cooper band and ended up dead. It was the scary part is as much as it is to jump in with a big show like that, all the music responsibility. Yes. And now that you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. There's a lot going on.
Yes.
But it's a special thing for Joe Perry. Last year I did the Joe Perry project, and we went to Brazil and Argentina, and we did some East Coast shows. So it's been it's been quite the experience. What can you say? It's like it keeps you on your toes, all that stuff. And working with Joe's a whole other thing. I mean, Joe's like a very artistically based guitar player. He's not straightforward at all. And learning his music, and he loves the upright. He wanted me to bring the upright too. He's very musical. So that's like a whole other, almost like leaning into this jazz rock stuff on the solo stuff. It's really interesting. So I've been really fortunate to have all these experiences, and I wouldn't trade it for the world, man. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Well, I want to bring this back to Crossbone Skully. Yeah, with this I guess, endeavor, how is it viewed? Is this going to be a project, or is it like a long-term band?
Well, Tommy is prolific. He's got so many Crossbone Skully songs up his sleeve. I don't want to reveal too much. It's his kind of.
Oh yeah.
He's going to be the one that lets more out and whatever. But there's a lot going on there. I think it's going to go on for. I think it's going to develop into touring and more releases for sure.
Oh, exciting.
That's what it's all geared. That's what he's shooting for. That's what he and I've spoke about. Again, I'm going to let him reveal certain things, but there's a certain couple bands that might have the band on tour with them, stuff like that are coming up.
Well, that's exactly what we wanted to hear. We want to hear it's a long-term thing.
Yeah. And I love working with Tommy. That would suit me just great. I mean, if the Vampires are working, that would happen. And, but in between, it'd be great if I was out there touring with Skully.
Oh,
and I like that. I like the music quite a bit, and I think he's just a mega talent. I like working with him a lot. So if it all pops into place, again, say the certain band having the Crossbone Skully on tour and all that, I'm in. Oh. You know what I mean? So that's kind of where it's at. It's hard to say, exactly, but it sounds like it's all geared towards long term. Yeah.
Oh, that's exactly what we wanted to hear. But I'm really going to go back a little bit in depth here. In 2001, you took part of Mick Jagger's "Goddess in the Doorway" album. Yeah. Fantastic album, yes. And a star-studded lineup of guests performing in that album's creation. Can you talk about the opportunity of recording with Mick Jagger?
That was one of those things that was very surreal. I was here in Hollywood. Marty Fredrickson's a friend of mine. He and I wrote several Owl songs too. He co-wrote that song "Pusher." Okay. Marty took an interest in my band Owl, and we worked on I think 4 or 5 songs. "Don't Know What You Got," "Pusher." Let's see, "No Light" was another one. So maybe 4 or 5. I'd have to look at everything to kind of pull it all back together here. But so I worked with him, and he had me on some bass on some things. And he called me and said, "Hey, Chris, could you come out to, I think it was called Rumble or something like that in the Valley. It's not there anymore. Nice studio, though." And he said, "Can you come out today and do a session and bring your upright bass, bring a bass, like your old P bass with new strings, bring your amp, bring your pedal board. Like, can you do that today for me? And when can you be here?" Like that kind of thing. And I said, "Well, geez, I just got to jump in the shower, pack. I'll get everything in my car. I can be out there in an hour and a half or something." And he said, Great. Here's the address. Here's where it is. It's off this road, blah, blah, blah. And before I hung up the phone, I was like, "Oh, yeah, Marty. It's Marty. He's a mega talented producer. I love working with him." I didn't even think to ask who it was for until the last second of the phone call. I'm like, "Oh, yeah, Marty. Who is this for?" And he goes, "Mick Jagger. See you in an hour and a half. Bye." And I was like, wow. And I think Daryl Jones was one of the main guys on it, and he couldn't make it that day for whatever reason. So they wanted to keep working and not stop. So that's how I ended up there. And yeah, I hung out with Mick, and I did a bunch of bass stuff, but it was actually some upright bow stuff that ended up on that song Paradise. Yeah. And which is cool. And the whole experience, Mick was there, for a while there. We were done tracking, and he said, "You want to stay for dinner?" And he started pulling out these awesome bottles of wine, and he had a chef there and his sort of help and all that. And we hung out for hours drinking wine. It was just absolutely phenomenal. And so by the time I got home, way late that night and stuff, I was like, wait a minute, I just did that. You know what I mean? And in the moment, you want to do a good job, and you're just doing your job. But it hit me after. It was one of those. I'm like, did I actually just what? What just happened? It was really great. Yeah. And for a minute there, I don't know if he knew who his live guy was going to be or whatever. He was touting me as his new guy. So I was really excited about that. But Daryl Jones ended up doing. I mean, he's in the Stones. I mean, I'm not surprised, whatever. But just to have that opportunity was amazing. And then I live here in Laurel Canyon, and I moved away, and now I'm back actually. And I was going down to my mailbox, and a limo pulls out in front of the house, and I'm like, "What's that?" There's a lot of big time people up here, but I'm like, "Oh, who's that?" They don't want anything to do with me. What's going on? And the window went down, and it's Mick Jagger. This is so weird. 2 weeks later, when I'm going to get the mail, and he's like, "Hey, Chris, what's up?" And I'm like, "Mick, what are you doing here?" And he was working with 4 producers on that album, which is at the time was kind of a unique way to work. It's commonplace now, but at the time back then, mostly you had one producer. So he was going up the road to work with my buddy Danny Saber. So each guy was like doing a quarter of the record, or 4 guys or something. And it was just funny. It's just like, again, I can't, like, people ask me, how do you meet all these people? I'm like, I don't know. I don't even know what's going on. It's like almost more of a mystical sort of different thing. I don't run around hustling going, "Hey man, if you need a bass player, if you want, I haven't done that." So that was just one of those, that's cool you brought that up. This is one of the just special things. I could have maybe done more and could have been his guy, whatever, but just to have that was phenomenal, and to be so liked by him and all that, really cool.
So surreal. Cool. We're running out of
we're
running out of a lot of time for the evening. I have one last question for you, and then we'll leave you alone. Deal?
Sure.
Yeah. So I asked this to all of our guests, or 99% of our guests. The mystery of rock and roll, with the dawning of the internet and social media. There's no mystery. There's no Led Zeppelin mystery or Kiss or any bands like that. Queen. We could just go on forever. Social media has kind of destroyed that. But for you, for the artist and the fan, what do you prefer? The mystique and mystery of rock and roll, or do you like this new age of accessibility? Where's your head at in all this?
To be honest, I like the mystique. That's why you don't see me unveiling everything. Yeah. That's why I have artwork and stuff like that for my new solo record. Which I'm going to continue doing more, by the way. I have 6 out now on all social media platforms. But that's why I went with the artist and the artwork and the stories. And I put that forth more than, here I am backstage, here I am having dinner, here I am here. I'm not as comfortable with that. But I'm pretty accessible, I do enjoy aspects of it. But I don't feel it's necessary. Everyone's different. Some people like to go about, going live and being very accessible. I'm accessible maybe through Messenger and writing me on Instagram, and I'll like a lot of the fan stuff and say thank you and stuff like that. But I don't think you need to have it all out there because of the kind of music I'm doing. It's not really cutesy pop or anything like, you know what I mean?
Oh,
it's supposed to, and playing with the artists I've worked with and stuff like that. It's I think it's meant to have some mystique, and that's why, if everyone gets a chance that's listening, check out what I've been doing. It's all about mystique, but I enjoy being accessible, and I really enjoy communicating with the fans. So I think it's a little bit of both for me.
Oh, very good. Yeah. Well, we're running out of our allotted time for the evening. Is there anything that we left off tonight that you'd like to plug or promote?
Oh boy, there's a lot going on, but we really covered it. The Mad Day Out's going to be a fun thing. We're going to be sharing this new recording stuff with people, and I just had this really cool experience with a lot of things connecting. As you heard from some of my stories with the musicians, I really appreciate, and it seems like they appreciate me too. And there's some things brewing, but maybe we can catch up another time in 2024, and I'll be able to tell you some more.
We will be all about that. Well, this is how things are going to work out. Once it's all cleaned up, we'll send it to your PR person. I'll send it to you as well. And please share wherever you possibly can. We'd really appreciate it.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for the chat today, gents. I appreciate it.
It's been fun.
Well, Chris, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was
great.
It was a pleasure and a thrill to have you on tonight.
Thanks so much. Glad you guys enjoyed it. I did too.
Take care.
their tongue and pays their bills instead. Hide in the spotlights, fight the grip of death. You can have the air you need, but you best not take one breath. Hey. Roll the dice. Take your chances.
Welcome to the night. You think you know Night Demon? Then the Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast is for you. Step into the darkness as we peel back the curtain to give you an unprecedented, all-access look into the mind and the heart of the demon. We're talking band history, song analysis, studio anecdotes, stories from the road. It's everything a diehard Night Demon fan could want and more. This is the only place to learn the inside scoop, the deep dive trivia, the untold tales from the band members themselves and those closest to the Night Demon story. Need more? The Sacred Night Demon Crypt will be pried open to reveal demo recordings that have never before seen the light of day, all with in-depth commentary by the band and the people who were there for the writing and recording process. This is a gold mine, a treasure trove of all things Night Demon. Head over to nightdemon.net or wherever you listen to podcasts.